Sorry.
Love all these new bells and whistles. So we'll convene this meeting, and why don't we do the roll first? Christina, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair Arnrich.
Here.
Vice Chair Nowak. I do know that our alternate member Haskew is here.
Yes,
Perfect.
I'm
Member
shorter
Butt.
than she is.
Member Butt.
Here.
Thank you. Member Geringer.
Here.
Thank you. Member Thorpe. Is he here?
Don't think he's
here. Okay.
not here yet.
Okay, so we have Member Thorpe absent and Vice Chair Nowak absent.
Okay, great. And do we play the video for these meetings?
Yes, we do.
Okay, well, please play the video.
You bet. Whoops. There we go. Can you hear it? No.
No sound.
Okay, one more time.
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom meeting pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N-2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should remute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. A 30-second warning will be provided. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the COVID-19 Special Notice for Public Comment Guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Great, thank you, Christina, for that. This takes us to the next item on our agenda, which is public comment. And this portion of public comment is for anything that is not on today's agenda. And we'll start with Christina. Have we received any written comments for public? We have not. And is there anybody in the audience participating today who would like to make public comment? Please physically raise your hand and I will call on you. I do not see any. Christina, do you see any?
I do not see any hands either.
Okay. Great. All right. So this will move to the consent item. And today we have 6 items on our consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered routine and may be acted on in one motion. However, is there anybody in the audience who would like to remove an item for discussion? Please, if so, please raise your hand. Seeing none. Is there anybody on the board who would wish to remove an item? Please raise your hand. Seeing none. Is there a motion?
I move approval of the consent calendar. Geringer.
Thank you, Teresa. Is there a second?
Second by Butt.
And a second by Tom Butt. Seeing no further discussion, Christina, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Member Butt. Member Butt?
Oh, yes.
Sorry. Member Geringer?
Yes.
Member Haskew?
Yes.
Member Thorpe? And Chair Arnrich.
Yes.
Okay, the item passes.
Okay, thank you very much for that. This takes us to item number 4A, our regular agenda item. This is our legislative update. And we are delighted to have our team here again today. And Lindsay, we're going to ask you to start us off.
Yes, good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Happy Thursday. I think the big news of the morning for our staff related to this is that the governor has indicated that virtual meetings will be able to continue beyond June 15th, and he will give ample notice and transition time for us to move back to in-person meetings. So for those of you who weren't on this call earlier when Tim announced it, I just wanted to repeat that because I know that's something that each of your jurisdictions and we have been following very closely. So it sounds like we will be continuing to see each other in this format for a while to come. And with that, I'd like to invite our federal advocates, Gus Maples and Jason Ty, and our state advocate, Mark Watts, to give their updates to this committee. So I think we will start with the state level this time, because I know a lot is happening as we wrap up budget season in Sacramento. So Mark, feel free to give us your update.
Welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much, Lindsay and Chair Arnrich. I had 3 items I was going to discuss, but one's been dispensed with, and that's the good news about the virtual meeting. So now I'll give you a brief update on budget developments here in Sacramento, and then a couple of bill items that staff wanted me to bring to your attention. With respect to the budget, just to set the scene, we are at the point in the legislative process where tomorrow is the last day for bills to pass out of their House of Origin. And 2 weeks ago, we had the suspense calendar. And so the last 2 weeks have been spent legislatively working on getting bills through. But in addition, this time is normally set aside for a budget conference committee. This year, we're not going to have a budget conference committee for the first time in my recollection. Instead, they are going through a process, and I think it's really related to the amount of additional revenues that are available from the state and federal coffers, and trying to put together spending plans that are acceptable. So as a reminder, the Constitution requires a balanced budget to be adopted by June 15th. So I think this first major round of budget deliberations is winding up pretty quickly. There were budget committee hearings scheduled for yesterday afternoon and yesterday evening. I think we'll see budget bills on the floor by Monday on the schedule that we're on. Just from a big picture, the legislature's version of the budget has total spending of $267 billion. And that almost 200 million of that is state general fund. Now, even with reserves of $25 billion. So you can see with the liquidity that the state is facing is significant and substantial. There had been a significant push from transportation advocates for funding from some of the so-called surplus revenues for programs ranging from adaptation grants to additional trade corridor and other major funding programs. Wasn't entirely successful, but there was great progress made. So I'll just tick off a few of the major items. First off, the governor had proposed $1 billion for expenditure in the LA area related to the 2028 Olympics, and that has been approved, is approved by both houses. And there was also an additional $1 billion for priority transit spending projects, and that too was approved. So both those will be funded and pushed through the TIRCP program, which is under the control of the secretary. I think we've seen some significant projects funded from TIRCP, and that will be a supplement to the normal funding from cap and trade and SB1. In addition, there was $2 billion that the governor proposed that has been approved by both houses, and that's a $2 billion over the next several years for state highway, basically shop projects, as well as local streets and roads maintenance. And it's largely funded by, at least at the state level, by the interest earnings that have been accumulating to SB1. There have been some controversial proposals on those interest earnings in the past, and now it's being dedicated back into the shop where we think it should have been. In fact, there's a bill that my organization, Transportation California, has been sponsoring and has moved out of the House, AB 604, which would dedicate those interest earnings, and to see the administration adopt that was a very pleasant surprise. In addition, for transit agencies, the TDA trailer bill language that continues some of the forgiveness on fines based on fare box recovery has been adopted. And as well, the continuation of the NEPA delegation, which we've been pushing for in Sacramento for for a couple of years, trying to get that done, and that's been approved. One of the new programs that was being pushed by transportation advocates was significant funding for transportation climate adaptation grants, both hard construction and some planning. And $400 million was put aside for that program. It's been included in both budgets. So that, and finally, probably one of the most interesting developments was the deferral of the remaining $4.2 billion requested from Prop 1A by the High-Speed Rail Authority to complete and continue funding the initial operating segment in the Central Valley. That was deferred for now, and I think that's more of a tactical issue to make sure that some of the other things that the legislature is asking for are addressed by the administration. Finally, well, I think I'll jump ahead and move on to the legislative items that the staff wanted me to bring. So that's the budget in a nutshell. I do expect to see another couple bites at the apple in the budget process later this summer. And I'll be reporting on those to Lindsay and the management. Two major bills, or two bills of key interest, are that we want to bring to your attention. The first one is AB 1401 by Laura Friedman, who happens to be the chair of the Assembly Transportation Committee. This is the bill that prevents cities and counties from enforcing minimum parking requirements where the developments are close to public transit facilities. And the definition of close to is within a half-mile walking of either a high-quality transit corridor, which is one that has a frequency of service that's appropriate, or a major stop. She has concluded from her experience here in California that mandatory parking requirements have resulted in an oversupply. And it's a controversial measure that's moving through the process. Wanted to make sure it was on your radar screen. Additionally, the League of Cities is vociferously fighting this measure. They, first of all, say it overrides local control. And secondarily, it has a deleterious effect on the density bonus law, since you'll be able to, developers will not be in the position of having to provide parking slots in exchange for additional affordable housing units. So that has to be reconciled somehow. And the League of Cities is going to continue to oppose it until there are some changes and modifications. Another major bill is SB 674, which is brought to our attention by the County Connection. This bill creates the California Jobs Plan, and it started off requiring any contractors and bidders on transportation-related contracts to have to submit a form that lays out the number of jobs and the quality of jobs created and retained as a result of receiving the contract. It was amended, so the support and opposition is interesting. The contracts for road, bridge, and highway construction were excluded from this. It leaves basically transit-related projects and high-tech installations as being subject to this, as well as probably charging infrastructure and the like. It's problematic, and there had been more expectations of additional clarifying amendments. They haven't been seen and were adopted to the bill. So I think the transit world is ramping up its opposition, and we wanted to bring that to your attention. So with that, quite a bit of activity going on, and I'm happy to report some of the nice progress on the state transportation budget, different from prior years where we've had cuts. So it's a pleasure to report. Thank you very much.
Mark, thank you. That last bill you mentioned,
Yes,
jobs bill, that was AB 674.
SB 674, Durazo, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
I-
Lindsay, any other comments you want to make on
Can I
this?
clarify, Chair, that County Connection has actually asked this committee to recommend an oppose unless amended position on that bill. So I'd like to put that forward for your consideration as we get to the end of our updates for potential action by this committee.
Okay. Any questions or comments to Mark on our statewide issues? Okay, seeing none. Lindsay, you want to introduce Jason and Gus? And tell us
Yes,
what's
we
happening?
have Gus Maples and Jason Ty with our federal advocacy firm, Ty Ginsburg and Associates, here with us this morning. And just as California is in a very busy time legislatively, so is the federal government. So Gus, I'll let you or Jason, whomever chooses, go ahead and give the update on what's happening in DC.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi, good morning. Lindsay's right. There's a lot going on. Just last week, the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee took the first step of real action this Congress and officially approved unanimously the highway portion of the reauthorization for surface transportation this upcoming year. Of course, with the different jurisdictions in the Senate, the Commerce Committee must still approve a lot of the safety and regulatory related titles. The Banking Committee will have to act for transit programming, and ultimately this will come down to paying for everything through the Finance Committee. But the EPW Committee, Environment and Public Works, did pass a highway portion of this process that increases highway program funding by 34% over the existing FAST Act levels, approximately between 330 million, depending on how the budget works out, just for highway programming. California itself would see an immediate $800 million apportionment increase over the current fiscal year levels to $4.8 billion next year. And the final year of this bill, 5-year bill, final year in FY26, California would see more than $1 billion increase over the existing levels just for highway funding. This bill also includes a new program to help get toward President Biden's goal of electrifying our transportation systems with a $500 million per year grant to build out electric vehicle infrastructure. And California's new Senator Padilla is on this committee. We are working with his team on some ideas he has related to building out an automated vehicle grant program, as well as furthering the eligibilities for AV related infrastructure and V2V infrastructure in this process. That will be probably coming up in the commerce portion of their jurisdiction. Of course, next week, the House will take action. The House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee is expected to reintroduce a similar bill to the HR 2. You'll remember they approved last year off the House floor. We expect this would be more ambitious than the Senate proposal in the EPW committee, but ultimately that Senate bill is much closer to what a true bipartisan agreement will probably look like. The other big thing in the House bill coming up next week is they are doing earmarks as part of their, or member designated projects, as the new politically correct term, as part of their reauthorization process. And we have been engaged with the Contra Costa area delegation. So we'll see how that shakes out as well. Of course, last week, President Biden also released his full detailed budget, more than just the skinny budget from earlier in the spring. It saw hundreds of millions of dollars increases in transit and rail programming over current levels. There's also a big emphasis on EVSE, electric vehicle infrastructure. One thing of note to CCTA is the low and no emission transit grants. The proposal modifies this to just a new zero emission system transformation grants, but it does increase the funding level from the current year level of 180 million to 250 million in his proposal. There's also a piece of his plan to provide up to $140 billion in different budgetary programs through rebates, as well as grants and formula funding to build out a national network of 500,000 EV chargers and replace 50,000 diesel transit vehicles with new zero emission vehicles. So there's a big focus on climate change and addressing those issues as part of a larger theme within what he's focused on in DOT this upcoming year. The Senate, back to earmarks a bit, the Senate is doing a bit smaller form of earmarks just within its appropriations process this year. And we have been talking to Senator Padilla's staff in line with furthering some of the goals that we had worked with our House members on. And Tim and Lindsay actually met with his team, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, to discuss some of that and our other priorities. So we will see as that process unfolds a bit later in the summer, possibly about a month and a couple of weeks from now. That's my high level things. I don't know if Jason has anything to add, or if there are any questions, I'm happy to take those.
Sorry, maybe just a quick question first, Gus. On the highway transportation, the FAST Act reauthorization, unanimous to get it out. But given all the various committees before the money, how long do you estimate that it's going to take to get it all the way through? All the stops and checks and balances.
To enactment of the legislation?
Right.
I would expect the way Congress operates on deadlines, the end of the fiscal year would be September 30th. There's a possibility if the Senate, if the other Senate committees get their acts together to cover the other modes of transportation, throughout the rest of this summer, and then a heavy August recess work period, you could see action in, early mid-fall. Of course, it could slip towards the December omnibus timeframe ultimately, but I would say there's definitely this is the focus of this administration to have an infrastructure package. The joke in town is that Infrastructure Week has been every week for the last few years, and it's finally Infrastructure Week.
Great, good news. Jason, anything you want to add, or?
Nothing else to add. I think Gus gave a fantastic presentation. Happy to answer any questions, but we have fingers crossed on the member. I'm going to call them earmarks. I'm sorry, I'm a little less politically correct because I'm older now. But really, I would want to give a very significant shout out to Lindsay, Tim, and the rest of the team, because this process in this Congress, they were building the plane while it was in the air. And so all of us that were going in asking for funding requests were building that plane in the air at the same time. So to put all of these pieces together took a tremendous amount of work by the CCTA Lean and Mean team. So I want to congratulate them and the board for weighing in and getting so many different letters of support from so many different stakeholders. This really is kind of a taking a village team effort to get to that first step. So thank you.
Great for that. Questions from committee? Teresa.
Excuse me, and you may have said this, but so similar to what Newell asked, we're all very interested in timing. So on the member designated grants earmarks, do we have a sense of that process? And if you said it, I apologize.
Gus, you want to take it?
That will be, those will not be separate. That will be a part of the overall transportation reauthorization package. It will be the same timeline.
Okay.
But separate from, typical grants where there may be a notice of funding period and then there's a review of them and things, and that could drag out an additional months to a year after enactment. These would be a more immediate cash infusion.
Great. Thank you for the clarification.
But we would know, I wouldn't say we would know, we would have some level of clarity once the bill is released during markup. So when the committee marks up next week, the intent is to include these member designated projects in that particular draft bill. At this time now, things can change. So we'll have some clarity what's in and what's out.
Great. Good news. Other questions or comment from committee members? Okay, seeing none. Jason, Gus, thank you so much for the advocacy and the hard work and for keeping us informed. And as Jason said, boy, it was a rush for everybody to respond and get up to speed. But I think, we're poised to have some good results here. So Lindsay, let's go back. I think you were asking the committee to make a motion to send a letter of opposition to SB 674. And that request came from County Connection, who was actually involved in originating this bill. So I think that's a strong message that it's went sideways from what the simple intention was.
I believe that it was oppose unless amended.
Okay. Would somebody care to make a motion?
Happy to make the motion to submit a letter to oppose unless amended for SB 674.
Is there a second?
Yes, the Haskew.
Yeah, great. So it's been moved by Geringer, seconded by Haskew. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Christina, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Member Butts.
Yes.
Member Geringer.
Yes.
Member Haskew.
Yes.
Member Thorpe. And Chair Arnrich.
Yes.
Okay, so the item passes with members present.
Great, thank you. Any other items you want to comment on, Lindsay, or we're just going to wait now and cross our fingers that we've done our homework? So excellent, thank you. Okay, this will take us to item 4B, and this is approval of resolution 21-33A, which adopts the authority's 21-22 budget. Following a public hearing on June 16th, Brian Keller will present this items. So, Brian, where are you? There you are.
Good morning, and just to let you know, the finance group here at CCTA, we don't build anything in the air, so there's no need for parachutes or anything like that. But no, it's a great effort by CCTA staff, and kudos to each and every one of them for digging deep and everything we've gone through in the last year and taking a look at implementing some plans in the projects department. Really gets us to having a really strong financial position. And it's one thing to work for an organization that has no sunset, but for temporarily for our sales tax, we do have a sunset of 2034. And that always becomes part of our presentation and what we're working to do. So with that, this screenshot here is just a snapshot of everything rolled up into one little individual document that shows our sales tax revenues that's so near and dear to our heart. Here we are expecting for the fiscal year 2021, the prior year that we're in right now, we amended our budget to $95 million. I'm very pleased to let you know that based off our sales tax information right now, I'm pretty sure we're going to get really close to the $100 million mark if the numbers keep coming in and the reporting shows where we are. Based off of all of that, that's a lot of things happening. A lot of people's businesses starting to open up. So therefore, when I was looking at 2021 and 2022 and working with HDL, we want to go with something a little flat, like $98 million. But again, as we move through the next 6 months and we start our mid-year budget for next year, that number may be able to go up a bit as well. A lot of the money on the sales tax, as you know, flows through to the projects department, programs, planning, administration, and also pays our debt service. So our federal, state, and local revenues, that's a bunch of revenue that comes in for reimbursement purposes on the projects, which is close to $30 million. And then we have our investment income. Interest rates are very low. That's going to be a very important part of my discussion as we move down to the debt service piece. I don't want to talk too much about that, but I'm very excited. And then there are other sources. Other sources is accumulated funds from prior fiscal years to pay for projects that we estimate that are going to be done in this fiscal year. So the projects teams, as we go through this, they have a budget. We have external funding and grant funding that we need the budget for. And the program section is an allocation based off of revenue that we receive. And there's also the PED-BITE programs and the TLC programs that are accumulation of funds in previous years that they expect are going to be paid in this year. So as we discussed the sales tax, you can see that there was in our mid-year or in our 2020 budget, we thought it was going to drop about 18%. We're having about 94, so that's about a 22% from what our budget was. But from our actuals, we're probably going to be up from 93 million, closer to about 98, 99 million. Maybe it might be an auction. We might go all the way up to 100. I hope so. Next year will be 98 million. And then the capital projects that I was mentioning. Last year we look at $67 million of budgeted external funding. That's a lot of money compared to the 98 million we're going to receive in sales tax. A lot of it is on state and federal funds that helped us with the 684 interchange and the I-680 carpool lane extension. Also, we had some funds in there for the Innovate 680, which is our new large project for this fiscal year. So the authority pays on these capital projects, the larger capital projects, we pay in 5 days or less. And that's a lot of work for the CCTA family. But what happens is we get lower bids, as we discussed before, and we develop great relationships and work with our vendors. And as we work on the reimbursements, anything to do with the federal and state, that's a long time for us to get reimbursed. We'll submit an invoice to Caltrans and it'll take sometimes 60 to 90 days for us to get paid. So therefore, when we do our budget estimates, we have to estimate we can't estimate 100% of our expenditures and get 100% of our revenue. So we have to move some of the revenue out to the next fiscal year. And that also contributes a little bit to the use of prior year reserves. We have enough reserves in the Measure J projects division to cover this if needed. And then we also have some federal and local funds for the planning, CMA, and PDA functions. So we get about $1.2 million in surface transportation funds. We're getting some money from MTC for the SR4 express lane study of about $220,000. And then in the CMA program, we have external funding that comes in to help support the program. And whatever's not recovered, we go ahead and we bill out to the local agencies. And your local agency will pay a percentage based off of population and some other street road miles as well. GoMenum has a contribution of $175,000. There's a deposit on hold from GoMenum from a couple of years ago, and as we have salary for staff that work on that, we go ahead and we bill it against that, and there's a small contribution moving from our deposit account into that special revenue fund. City of San Ramon, as far as the construction and the planning and all of those pieces, there's about $1.2 million that'll come from them on that piece. So as we talk about the Measure J capital projects, this year we only have about $51.5 million of capital projects. The Caldecott Tunnel, fourth bore, again, that is project management and some landscaping pieces there. We have some closeout projects for the rail extension, SR4 East widening. You can see that we have a study out there. We have some other funding of about $100,000. And as we move through these, we have the East County corridors and we have the SR4 interchange. We're having some external funding for looking at the next phases. So as we go to the bottom right-hand side of the screen, we have the Measure J programmed, and that's about $22 million of Measure J revenues that would be used if every single expenditure came in and the revenues met these projections. There is a chance that we can receive more money and there is a chance that we'll spend less, but we need the budget just in case all of these things come through. And again, as we look at the change from year to year, as we look at the capital projects, the Measure J projects is about 55.8 million and represents 32% of the budget, $174.4 million. The capital projects, as you know, and we've been talking about for years, they always remain open year after year as there's closeout items, landscaping items, and then there's some project overhead that's charged there by the consultants to get us to the finish line so that we can close these projects out. Proposed expenditures, authority salaries and benefits is about $4.5 million for the entire agency. That's down about $332,000. Where authorized positions is 20. We only have 18 staff positions. That's what I used in the budget for next fiscal year. And we also have the 2% CPI included for next fiscal year for the staff members. The annual PERS rate decreases. You know, over the years, we've talked about making lump sum payments. Our liability on the CalPERS side, that'll come out in August for last fiscal year. Based off the interest earnings that I've been seeing, I'm hoping that we may get to the zero, if not super funded. But that'll be my next task to look at in late August when that comes out. But as a result of us being well funded, our classic employees and our PEPR rates go down just a little bit. That's the piece that the authority pays on behalf of the employees for their pension. And then another item that we have, and I've mentioned before, is the OPEB contribution rate is 2%. And so we go out and we do an actuarial every 2 years and we look at, okay, how much money do we have to put aside for each employee to pay for their medical benefits through the Medicare, up to the Medicare piece. And we've been using a 9.9% for several years. We, based off of interest earnings and our contributions over the years, we're now super funded. So what that means is we have too much money in the bank with OPEB. That's a good thing because they're earning a lot of interest. And what that allows us to do is reduce our interest or our contribution rate all the way down to 2%. I'll be re-looking at that this summer when we start our next actuarial. I do want to keep a small amount, maybe 1% going in just to make sure that we're still doing it. It's not forgotten. So the next group of individuals that come in to run CCTA, they want to go, okay, we're contributing and not forget about it. And then realize when it's too late, we have a huge hole that we have to fill. So this reflects about $195,000 savings over last year. Last year already had a little bit of savings in there that I built into the budget. So this is good. Administration, salaries and benefits, the 1% limitation that we have for the strategic plan and expenditure plan is about $632,000 and represents about 0.65 of the 1.0%. So also in running the organization, we have a decreased property lease line item in there for about $10,000. Our rates on our property lease increase every single year, but when we signed the lease many years back, at 132nd month, they said that there'd be no rent. So with that, we were able to reduce the rent, $35,000. But because it increases for the next 11 payments, we also have some CAM charges, which is the overhead for running the building. So we're only going to decrease it about $10,000. We have a decrease of about $25,000 for information systems. Last year, we replaced a server, a bunch of things, and a lot of laptops and other items so that people can work from home and computer monitors. I'm spending a lot of time on the little dollar amounts here, but they're very important. Programs have increased about $6.9 million. Again, as sales tax increases, our percentages to all the bus agencies and all the cities and LSM increases. But again, there's the bus services, the TLC, and the PED bike, there's projects in there as well. And so when we're estimating that we're going to deliver these projects, that'll use some of our reserves as well. The TFC program, they give us about $1.7 million. A percentage of that we use for salaries for staff members to run the program. and that's usually about 6% of the revenue we receive. And then the GMS program is about $170,000 in salaries related to staff members that we will take out of that deposit account. Planning department has an increase of about $1.7 million to $5.2 million this year, and several things that they've added into the budget. I tried to spell it all out in the staff report, but some of the big items are the action plan update, the streetlight data subscription that they're planning on doing, the activity-based model development, that's about $850,000. They also have some increases on some other action planning and deliverables that they have. And then they've also added the VMT mitigation and Vision Zero implementation. So these projects will probably disappear in the next couple of years, and then the cost for running the planning department will come down as well. Salaries and benefits increased as a result in the planning department, as we have $356,000 of revenue that helps pay for the delivery of the projects and programs and the overhead for CCTA staff to talk about Measure J and getting all of the allocations done. Debt service. Debt service is about $43.5 million. It's up about $1.5 million. When I put this budget together about a month ago, we didn't know where we would be today. We met with everybody in May. We talked about our financing plan, and this has been going on for several years. And so with that, we were able to, Tim and I were up bright and early, 6:30, watching the market open up. We had all our calls over the last several days, our pricing sheets, we had them out to the market. We were able to get expectations, look at our comparable agencies, what they were doing. You may have seen some emails from Tim, all the way to the bottom. Fitch upgraded the authority to a AAA. S&P confirmed it at AA+. That was very disappointing, but that's still, when you get your grade in school, you're very happy to get an A or an A-, but you always want the A+. And so we were able to refinance the 2018 bonds, the $100 million of floating rate notes. So we were able to eliminate the swap completely. And so if I had fireworks and do all those good things, I would have jumping on a little, animation in there. I'm super excited. I've been looking to do this forever. Thank you to all of you for your support and allowing us to get here. Yes, a lot of it is luck in the market. We cannot time it, but for how it worked out, we are very lucky to be in this position. And thank you for all of your support and help on that piece.
Well done.
So when we were meeting with you last month, we were looking at worst case scenario. If it went up 25 basis points, 30 basis points, okay, would you authorize us a $2 million expense to the authority? Well, we did better than that. We have $1.5 million of savings on the swap related transaction alone. We were able to get about $2.1 million on the refunded $12 million that we refunded. So together that brings us about $3.6 million in savings. There is some flexibility with this bond issuance. We put a 10-year call on it. So in 10 years from now, we have the opportunity to, if the authority has an accumulation of sales tax revenues, and depending on projects that we have the opportunity to pay off that balance in 10 years. We also have other bonds in our bonds portfolio that over the next 3 or 4 years, we can also make payments on those as well, refinance those, and have some potential savings down the road. But with that, we want to just take a snapshot of what happened yesterday. There's so much to talk about it, but just the net present value savings is $3.6 million. And from a cash flow basis, it works out to be about $5.2 million between now and 2034. Well, how did we jump from 3.6 to 5.3? The center column, prior remarketing cost 2018 A bonds. So if we had stayed with the swap transaction and remarketed it every 3 years, it was just an estimate of $150,000, $450,000 every 3 years. So it came out to be roughly $2 million. So we eliminated the risk. We eliminated the having to remarket this. We eliminated so much. And now we have a balanced portfolio. We know exactly what it's going to be now until 2034 without any changes. We have options. And so that's how we got here. So I'm very excited. Tim was part of the entire transaction. It was great to have the leader of the ship be part of it and fully understand everything that I'm doing so that he was super excited. And it was a lot of fun to have him with me and and our consultants obviously leading us through this. And so, Tim, do you have anything you want to say or contribute?
Just congratulations to the board. Really appreciate your support. And obviously, Brian really was a huge leader in all of this, working with K&N. I know K&N, I don't think K&N's on the call, but just we really had the A team on this, and everything came together just perfectly when we went out to the market. And just a huge congratulations to the board and to staff. And this is really exciting. And the fact that we have a sheet for the rest of out to 2034 was a huge contributor to our AAA credit rating by Fitch. And they were really excited about that as we're kind of looking towards the future.
Fantastic. What really, really well done.
Thank you. With that, staff recommends that you move this item forward to the authority board so that we can adopt the budget for next fiscal year. I'm available for any questions regarding the budget or any other items that you may have.
Brian, I love it when you finish strong. It's like a race. You only win the race if you can finish strong. Well done. Pretty exciting news. For those that are, when they see our budgets, it's always challenging, and you've done a very good job to explain. It's not that our budget went down, it's just how do we get matching funds. The good news is we're still getting extraordinary amounts on our capital expenditures. I think it's 29 billion, a million, sorry, I wish it was 29 billion, is from other sources, and Measure J is, below that. So it's an interesting agency. There are only 18 people on board now that are running the agency. We have 20 positions. We have a 2% increase built into this. So things are looking as they have for a long time, but they look really, really well done this year. So questions or comments from committee members first?
No question, just kudos to everybody, the excitement around that, and a great way to end that budget report. Brian, thank you very much. And I loved yesterday, I did get a text from Tim about 7 o'clock, but they had been up and working on it from 6:30. So just kudos. And actually also I wanted to thank again, Chair Arnerich and Vice Chair Nowak for being a subcommittee to work with the team on that. And so Newell, I loved your shout out when Brian was announcing that. And I know this has been a long-term goal for you to retire that SWAT.
And it worked because we saved money, which is what we were after. And the agency is down to zero risk. No more set-asides, no more of any of those complicated maneuvers or worrying that the interest is going the wrong way. Wow, borrowing money for 1.38%. Who would have thought in our lifetime? So timing is everything. Decisions are made because of timing. It isn't just happenstance. We got here by a series of decisions. We could have pulled the trigger years ago, but truthfully, it worked out better that we waited. So well done. Any other comments? Motion. This is a recommendation to move this to the full board.
Happy to make the motion to, I was trying to find the language, but to move the proposed budget 2021-2022 proposed budget to the full board.
Perfect. Is there a second? Is there a second?
Yes, there's a second. Haskew.
Perfect. So it's been moved by Geringer, seconded by Haskew. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Christina, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Member Butt.
Yes.
Member Geringer.
Yes.
Member Haskew.
Happily, yes.
Member Thorpe. And Chair Arnich.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes with majority present.
Great, thank you. So the next item is item number 4C, and this is approval resolution 2116P, which allows utilization of fund exchange reserve, or the FER funds, and authorization for the chair to execute agreement number 563 with Nissan to provide autonomous vehicle technology, ATV, for freeway driving, multi-agent collaboration technology, and public-private ecosystem and data gathering and management services. Jack, our autonomous guru, is going to present this item.
Good morning, Chair Arnrich and committee members. My name is Jack Hall, and I'm the ITS Connected Autonomous Vehicle Program Manager for CCTA. So I'll be handling item 1 of this agenda item, and Stephanie will be presenting item 2. For item 1, we are asking for a recommendation of approval to utilize the Fund Exchange Reserve and authorization to execute agreement number 563 with Nissan North America to provide autonomous vehicle technology for freeway driving, multi-agent collaboration technology with private partner ecosystems, and data gathering and management services for our Innovate 680 automated driving system project. Nissan will provide the following emerging products and services: assist with the development of the system architecture, data flow diagrams, concept of operations, system engineering management plan, safety rules and operation, a validation of the data management plan and system integration plan. 2, develop the use cases for the following: short-term shared world model, long-term shared world model, and platoon speed harmony. 3, develop a detailed demonstration plan for augmenting roadside sensors and how AV data can be used to make safer maneuvers and protect vulnerable road users. Use cases will be demonstrated virtually on-site at Gomentum Station and at project sites. Nissan will perform necessary modifications to its connected and AV seamless autonomous mobility communication hardware, AV software, and shared world model fleet decision-making module. 5, they'll provide a proof of concept testing and approval in a controlled environment. Nissan will perform each use case in a controlled environment at Gomentum Station. After testing the feasibility of the use cases in controlled and isolated environments, the team will test the use cases on public roads under daily traffic. The goal is to make sure the implemented technologies use cases are usable, robust, reliable, and scalable. The team will collect and compare data before and after the scenarios to show improvement in safety, mobility, and operations of connected autonomous vehicles. In this task, the team will start measuring important metrics needed by the ADS grant. The Nissan team will coordinate with other partners to ensure the data gathered and the test results meet the acceptance criteria established by the project evaluation plan and metric analytics. The estimated cost of Nissan's scope of services is $7,467,000, which Nissan will contribute $5,386,000 of in-kind services. Under agreement number 563, Nissan will be compensated the amount of $2,081,000, of which $1,567,000 is from ADS project funding sources and $514,000 from the Fund Exchange Reserve. Providing a match to Nissan's in-kind services is an eligible expense for the Fund Exchange Reserve per the authority's approved funding allocation policy. Nissan's scope of services includes Nissan UC Berkeley case scenarios on I-680 into the town of Danville area, allowing us to maximize research development by the Nissan UC Berkeley team. With that, staff seeks an approval recommendation to the full board for Resolution 2116P, which allows utilization of the Fund Exchange Reserve funds in the amount of $514,000, authorization for the chair to execute agreement number 563 with Nissan in the amount of $2,081,000 to provide autonomous vehicle technology for freeway driving, multi-agent collaboration technology with public-private ecosystems, and data gathering and management services for our Innovate 680 automated driving system project, and to allow the executive director or designee to make any non-substantive changes to the language. So that concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Jack, thank you for that very succinct report. I just want to take a moment also to thank Tim Hale, who has really worked, our executive director, behind the scenes for a long time on this, even before he's the executive director, to get these agencies involved, and together with Jack have pulled this together in just an amazing opportunity for us as sort of the first in the country type project. So at this time, questions or comments from committee members? I want to go back and make sure that we do, these are just recommendations we're making for the full board that we are voting on. And are there any comments on this or a previous action item on the budget from the public? Is there anybody in the public who would like to comment? If so, can you unmute and raise your hand and I will call on you. Christina, do you see anybody? I do not see.
I do not see anybody raising their hand, no.
Okay. Great, thank you. So I'll bring it back to the committee for action and a motion. Is there a motion? I can't make a motion. I could. But
I'll move the item by Butt.
And I'll second it, Geringer.
Okay, Luella, they got you first. Okay, it's been moved by committee member Butt and seconded by committee member Geringer. Is there any further discussion or comments? Seeing none, Christina, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Member Butt?
Yes.
Member Geringer?
Yes.
Member Haskew?
Yes.
Member Tharp? And Chair Arnerich.
Yes.
Okay, the item passes with members present.
Great, and this takes us to next item. So this is authorization to execute a cooperative agreement 9080.06 with Caltrans for establishment of Caltrans Innovation CIT team and approval of annual work plan for fiscal year 21-22. And who is going to present on this item? Oh, Stephanie, I'm sorry. Read my own notes. Stephanie, yes, of course. Thank you. Welcome.
Good morning, Chair Arnerich and Commissioners. My name is Stephanie here, Director of Project CCTA. This item is an action item seeking your approval to execute cooperative agreement number 908006 with Caltrans to establish a Caltrans innovation team for the Innovate 680 program. The Caltrans innovation team will help streamline the delivery process for the program. The Caltrans innovation team will include key managers from Caltrans District 4 staff assigned to serve in strategic roles and who are committed to deliver the Innovate 680 program and its projects efficiently. The innovation team will be a proactive champion for the Innovate 680 program within Caltrans. The Caltrans innovation team will work collaboratively with authority staff and the Innovate 680 consultant team. The Caltrans innovation team is committed to facilitate necessary district and headquarters approvals in a timely manner, provide strategic guidance, and implement innovative and streamlined delivery process for the Innovate 680 program of projects. The cooperative agreement defines the roles and responsibilities for the innovation team, Caltrans staff assignments, and organizational structure that is consistent with the Innovate 680 governance structure. The Caltrans innovation team consists of a corridor manager, a design principal, a design manager, traffic operations manager, and a system and technology manager. The cooperative agreement includes an annual work plan that provides reimbursements to Caltrans for the innovation team. The annual work plan includes the scope of work, a fee estimate, District 4 staff assignments, and the roles and responsibilities for each fiscal year. The annual work plan will be negotiated and approved by the authority board every year. The arrangement of the annual work plan will allow the authority flexibility to develop the scope of work that reflects the goals and needs for the program each year. The annual work plan for fiscal year 21-22 is in an amount not to exceed $216,600. The main focus for the Caltrans innovation team in the coming fiscal year will be the coordinated adaptive ramp metering or CARM project that the authority is implementing in a coordinated effort with Caltrans-led ramp metering project, as well as the development of the final concept of operations for the Innovate 680 program. To conclude, staff seeks your recommendation to the full board for the board chair to execute cooperative agreement number 908006 with Caltrans for establishment of a Caltrans innovation team and approval of the annual work plan for fiscal year 21-22 in an amount not to exceed $260,600, and to allow the executive director or designee to make any non-substantive changes to the language. And with that, happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Stephanie, thank you for that very succinct. This is a very important partner that we must have on the I-680 innovation project in order to it actually come to fruition. The only term I always wince on a little bit is when I hear ramp metering. I'd always like to think about it as smart ramp metering, because there was a lot of people in the San Ramon Valley, the 680 corridor, who was against ramp metering. But smart ramp metering, which is a new way of doing it, is exciting, and it's proved itself, and we will do that as part of this project. Any questions from the committee to Stephanie? Seeing none, is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on this item? If so, you can please unmute and raise your hand and we'll call on you. Christina, do you see anybody?
I do not see anybody.
I do not either. Okay, so we'll close that portion of public comment and bring it back for action. Is there a motion? Luella, I'm going to call on you.
I know. I'm trying to be, since I'm not really a regular member, I'm trying to be a laid back, not regular. But anyhow, I am happy to make the motion because of, if nothing else, Newell's importance applied to this, that we authorize to execute a cooperative agreement number 90.80.06 with the California Department of Transportation for the establishment of Caltrans Innovation Team and approved annual work plan for fiscal year 2021-22.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'm happy to second Geringer.
Great. So it's been moved by Haskew, seconded by Geringer. Any further comments? Seeing none, Christine, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, Member Butt,
Yes.
Member Geringer,
Yes.
Member Haskew,
Yes.
Member Thorpe, and Chair Arnrich.
Yes.
Thank you. The item passes.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you, Stephanie, and everybody involved in this great project. So the next item on the agenda is approval resolution number 2135A, which authorizes changes to authorized positions and approval to amend the authority's salaries, benefits, and compensation plan through July 1st, 2021. And Terry-Ann Grover is going to present this item. Terry-Ann, welcome.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Terry-Ann Grover, and I'm the Director of Administrative Services. And this morning, I will be bringing the findings and recommendations to you for the total compensation study. Every 3 years, we seek approval from the Authority Board to conduct a study in order to maintain the authority's competitiveness in the labor marketplace and adhere to our compensation philosophy of being a market rate employer and an employer of choice, which helps us attract and retain the highest caliber employees. We also requested to reinstate the Salary and Benefits Ad Hoc Committee, referred to as the SBC, to provide policy input and review the findings and recommendations from the study. The current compensation plan went into effect on July 1st, 2018, and it expires on June 30th, 2021. We kicked off the process when it was approved by the board on December 16th, 2020, to authorize us to move forward and enter into an agreement with Coffin Associates to conduct the study. Today, we have Georg with us from Coffin Associates, who led our project and was instrumental in the study and the development of the draft recommendations and the draft report. And I will now hand it over to him to explain the process, methodologies, and recommendations from the study.
Welcome, Georg.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. Let me share my screen if I could. Can everybody see that okay? Wonderful. I will try to be as succinct as my predecessors here if I can, and get right to the presentation. Basically, anytime a study like this is done by an organization, the goal is to put in place a compensation structure and plan that recognizes individuals for the work that they perform, for their performance levels and merit. One of the discussion items or topics we've had throughout with the organization is the fact that CCTA has positioned itself as an employer of choice in terms of compensation, and has a goal of paying employees not only fair but also competitively in the market. as a small organization, relatively small organization in terms of number of employees, yet with a mandate of doing big things, I would say, there is certainly a very heavy reliance on continuity of operations, continuity of talent within the organization, and by establishing a position of somewhat of a market leader in terms of compensation, that is something that organizations sometimes do to ensure that continuity, to ensure that talent is not only attracted and recruited, but also retained in the long term. So that's something that we took into consideration as we went through this process. Certainly the goal was to establish or develop or update CCTA's compensation plan to meet your needs, and certainly also to ensure that we not only looked at the external market, which we do in order to achieve external equity, but also to look within the organization and look at relationships between positions within the organization to achieve internal equity across the organization as well. I believe you may all be familiar with the agencies that we surveyed, which have been surveyed consistently for a number of years. Very common, I would say common comparator agencies for your industry and for the geographic region. Unless there are any questions about this particular slide, I'll move right along. This was just a listing so that you have that in front of you. In terms of the methodology, the way we go about doing this kind of work, again, you probably are very familiar with this process since you are doing this every 3 years. Between different consultants, I would say that our approach is probably very similar, and having initial meetings, understanding the scope of work, making sure that we agree to timelines and how we're going to go about doing the work. Certainly confirming the study variables in terms of the list of agencies, also looking at the list of actual job classifications or positions that we were going to survey, as well as agreeing on what we call the total compensation study factor. So in addition to salaries, which benefit elements that we were going to look at as well. Once we've had those study variables or study elements determined and agreed upon, we then went out and did the actual survey itself, which is the process of working with each of the comparator agencies to understand their classification and compensation systems, and doing what we call the job matching, ensuring that each match from each comparator agency is as similar or as comparable as possible to the jobs that we find at CCTA. From there, we then developed market survey spreadsheets and reports. We targeted the market position that CCTA has established in the past, which is market median plus 10%. So in looking at the various different statistical scenarios of averages and medians, we then focused on median of the market plus 10% to maintain CCTA's market position. Again, making sure that we aligned our recommendations that came out of the survey. So using the survey data to develop recommendations to maintain CCTA's market position and market or compensation philosophy. And then finally, developing final report and recommendations from the market survey. Here's just a quick slide on the various different factors that we look at when we do the job matching. No need to spend a lot of time on this, but just so you get a sense as to the how comprehensively we look at work and the type of analysis that we do in order to establish levels of similarity and comparability between different jobs. So really looking at the whole position and all of the components of the position, including duties and responsibilities, including knowledge, skills, and abilities, qualification requirements in terms of education, years of experience, and other components, as well as then looking at organizational structures and reporting relationships and responsibility for human and financial resources and other aspects. So really doing quite a sort of a deep dive into each position to make sure that we find the best matches. In terms of recommendations, we, again, as I mentioned, wanted to maintain CCTA's market position as a market leader and employer of choice, which we believe you have achieved by positioning yourselves at the market median plus 10%. We then looked at the market survey results based on those parameters and developed recommendations, and really found that for the most part, CCTA has done a very good job keeping up with the market and retaining your position at that median plus 10%. We made a few minor adjustments, some of it related to the market survey, some related to internal relationships, to make sure that your compensation structure and each individual salary range was sort of recalibrated based on that market median plus 10% goal. So we made small adjustments or recommendations to make small adjustments to your administrative assistant, chief financial officer, and deputy executive director of planning. There was also an internal relationship we reviewed for your director of administrative services and made a small adjustment to that particular position. And so that's in relation to base salaries. Then looking at total compensation and reviewing those results, again, with the median plus 10% goal, we did observe that, that the total compensation package pulled the organization a little bit below that median plus 10% goal. And the main reason was that the current contribution that CCTA makes to employee benefits packages for medical, dental, and vision insurance was a bit below market compared to the contributions that collectively that the other comparator agencies are making. So if there was a goal to achieve the median plus 10% for your total compensation package, including benefits, you may potentially want to consider an adjustment to the contribution to your insurance plans. And that is my part of the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. And I'll unshare my screen so we can better see each other.
And I'll just go ahead and finish off. So on May 25th, the authority and COF staff met with the Salary and Benefits Committee to discuss the findings and recommendations from the study as just presented. The SBC did approve the recommendations in the study to adjust the proposed salaries of the 3 proposed classifications based on market median plus 10% and provide internal alignment for the 4th classification. We are not recommending any adjustments to the health benefits. The SBC and staff seek authority board review and approval of resolution 2135A, which will approve the authority's compensation plan for July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2024, with proposed salary range adjustments and the CPI adjustment of 2% effective July 1st. That concludes our presentation, and we will take any questions that you may have.
Great, Terry, and thank you. And Georg, thank you. Really great presentation. I would just add before we get other comments, we always say we want to be an agency of choice. And we usually mean we're talking about the contractors that work for us. But it also means for the employees that work for us. We want to be that agency that if you work here, you're going to work in innovation and you're going to be compensated fairly for that. So I think this is a great study, very professionally done, and perfect timing as we come out of the pandemic to be looking at where we're at. Comments, questions from committee members? Seeing none, are there any questions or comments from our public? If so, please, you can go ahead and unmute and raise your hand and we'll call on you. And Christina, can you help me see if we have anybody there?
I don't.
I do not see that. Okay, we'll close the public comment, bring it back for discussion and or a recommendation to move this item to the full board.
I'll move the item, Butt.
Thank you. It's been moved by Committee Member Butt. Is there a second?
I'll second. Geringer.
And a second by Geringer. Is there any further discussion from the committee? Seeing none, Christina, will you take the roll, please?
Yes. Member Butt,
yes,
Member Geringer,
Yes.
Member Haskew,
Yes.
Member Thorpe, and Chair Arnerich.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you again. We really appreciate it. We look forward to seeing this at the full board. So this takes us to item number 5, this is correspondence and communications. There is some information in our packet. Commissioner staff comments, chair's comments, just another big shout out to the entire team that the bond refinancing is not just a reflection of a great effort, it's a reflection of who our agency is. That every position, every board member that participates in this, we have created an agency that is so well rated that public agencies in the United States, the rarity of getting a AAA or a AA plus rating is just extraordinary. Just absolutely unusual and very extraordinary. And it just speaks to the class of this agency, its innovation and its financial prowess to stay healthy on all levels. Not every city, every public agency can do this. From our, we don't have unfunded liabilities. We have cash reserves. We have coverage that was at over 2.08. Those are things that we would all love to have in all of our own cities. And we are just not in the same position as this agency. And it wouldn't be there if it wasn't for all the leadership from our employees, current board members, and future ones. So well done. Commissioners, any commissioner comments or reports as well? Okay, executive staff. Tim, any comments you want to add? Or?
No other comments. I just really want to say ditto to what you said. I was going to say something similar, but I don't know if I could say it any better than you did. So really appreciate it, Commissioner Arnerich, and the support by the board just for the continued success of the authority.
Well done. A good week to celebrate. Okay, this will take us to adjournment, and we will adjourn this committee for our regular proposed meeting on July 1st at 8:30 a.m. So thank you, everybody, and maybe we'll see some of you tonight at the Mayor's Conference. Thanks very much then. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, Christina.